Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to our Naturalist live chats here at the Alabama Nature Center. We're happy that you can join us this afternoon, and this week is National Amphibian Week, and it is the first ever Amphibian Week here in the United States, and we're celebrating this week in prime amphibian habitat. So if you look behind me, and I'm gonna swap around, I'm going to pan around to our gum pond. So if you've ever been out to the Nature Center, this is our gum pond. And you will notice that it's a rather peculiar pond. Because if you look right here, there's no water. We've got this boardwalk that goes around. And then as I'm panning, start to see a few little puddles. And there's some water, and it's actually a great day for amphibians because I hear thunder rumbling in the background. Hopefully our video won't be cut short by that, but a nice rainy day is good for amphibians because they are closely associated with water. So to talk about amphibians actually means double life because they spend part of their life in water and part of their life on land. So all amphibians are born in the water, and a place like this is perfect. And our gum pond, if you look at these trees, these are black gum trees, and let's look at these markings. Look at those markings. Do you see that? And that is where the water line comes to. So when it's actually cooler and really rainy, that is where the water line can actually come to in this area. So less evaporation occurring, the water can actually go up to these lines, and this actually can fill up. But right now it's hot, it's a bit drier, and so more evaporation is occurring, and so this pond is drying up. And I want you guys to think about why that's important to amphibians for an area that dries up. So Amphibian Week is meant to bring awareness for amphibians because amphibians are in trouble. So we have a decline of amphibian species. Part of that is because of habitat loss, and part of it is because of pollution, because amphibians are very sensitive, and it has to do with the way their skin is. So if we review our different types of vertebrates, we can think about their different skin coverings. So mammals have fur, birds have feathers, reptiles have dry scales, fish have slimy scales, and then we have amphibians. And amphibians have basically no skin covering. They have this naked skin, and their skin acts like a sponge. And for their skin to work properly, it has to stay wet, and their skin actually helps them to breathe. And so they're closely associated with these wetland type habitats in order to work properly. But because their skin is porous like it is, and because it allows them to breathe and it's semi-permeable, they are also very susceptible to different pollution or different toxins entering their skin. So you have to be careful if you're out around amphibians, catching amphibians and things like that, because you can actually hurt amphibians by picking them up when you have toxins on your hands. So if I had bug spray on my hands, or sunscreen or something like that, and I saw a frog and I wanted to pick it up, then I could actually hurt that animal. Likewise, if this area, which is prime amphibian habitat, had some chemicals dumped in it that was really bad and toxic to amphibians, they would absorb it into their skin, and it could really hurt them. So Amphibian Week is about bringing awareness to amphibians, and that's what we're doing. So we're talking about this habitat. This habitat is perfect for amphibians because it dries up, and one of the reasons why that's great is because there's no fish in here. So it dries up every year and there's no fish. And the reason that's good is because fish would actually eat the little amphibian babies. And so one of the cool things that makes an amphibian an amphibian is that they go through metamorphosis. Alright, so I'm going to switch you around here. We're going to talk a little bit about an amphibian life cycle. So, walking over here, because I have some cool things to show you today. We are going to look at some amphibians. Turn you back around. So we have some cool things to show you. We actually have different amphibians in their life cycle. Now, they all start out as an egg. And it's not like a bird egg that's hard, like a chicken egg that you crack open and have for breakfast in the morning. Their eggs are kind of like these little Orbeez. So I have these little Orbeez here. They're squishy and they don't really have a shell, really. They're jelly-like. And so, and you can tell a frog egg from a toad egg because a toad eggs are going to be in a string along like a string of pearls connected to each other. Frog eggs are going to be in a clump, and then salamanders, our other type of amphibian, they can be all different kinds of ways, but sometimes you'll just see them one by one, kind of like this. But they're kind of slimy like this, and they'll be in the water. Or some amphibians will lay them before the water gets to a pond, just like this gum palm. They'll, some, like the marbled salamander, will lay their eggs before the pond has started to fill with water, and they'll wait, and then the eggs will be underneath the water once it starts to fill up. Alright, then they start to go through a couple of different phases. So we've got some little frog tadpoles here, and you can see, we've got a little magnifying glass so we can look at them. Might be kind of hard to see, there's a little glare, but we can look at them this way. So just a blob with a tail, really. Pretty cool though, look at that. And it's not just frogs and toads that do this, but salamander have larvae too. They go through metamorphosis as well. And then I'm going to see about getting some assistance. We're going to look at a couple of different phases after, where they've got, this one's got its back legs, so that's what'll happen next, is they'll grow their back legs. Notice the tail isn't as fat anymore. It started to get a little skinnier and a little shorter. It's using energy from its tail. It's absorbing that into its body, using the energy to continue on with its metamorphosis. And then we've got a larger one here. And this one has started to look a lot more like an actual frog. It's got its back legs really developed, and it's got front legs really developed. Its tail is even shorter. And then we'll have an itty bitty little frog. And so we've got some more, you can see some in here. And if you ever want to go looking for tadpoles and frogs, you can get, oh, here we go. Here's our little frog. He's finished. He's ready to go. He's still a baby, he's still going to keep growing, but he's finished with his development. And if you wanted to ever get some, look at some tadpoles, and remember, these tadpoles belong out in the wild, so they belong where you found them. Don't try to take them home and put them in the water from your sink, because it has a lot of chemicals in it, and that'll kill them. And they need to eat things that are growing out in the pond, so they need that to survive. So it's really cool to look at some tadpoles, but just remember that they still need things from the pond to survive. So this is a net, pretty easy, cheap net that you can scoop up and look at tadpoles and find them in the different stages of development. And so that's really cool. That's the frog life cycle right there. And so those are some frogs, and we did another Facebook live chat where we talked about frogs. And you can go back on our Facebook page and see all about frogs. So we're not going to talk about frogs as much. We are going to look at some other creatures though. Now I want you to know that my hands don't have anything on them. Okay, they're rinsed really well. They don't have any chemicals, hand sanitizer, bug spray, sunscreen, anything like that while I'm handling these animals, and that's really important because I don't want to hurt them. So this is my little toad friend here. So different from a frog, notably because he has short stubby legs instead of nice long legs like a frog. So he just does a little hoppity hop instead of big leaps. That's how I can tell he's a toad. Now, contrary to popular belief, his little bumps on him, and they're not going to give me warts, okay? So that's caused by a virus that he does not have, okay? He just has bumpy skin. It's not going to hurt you. Now, these big bumps, right where my thumb is, right here, these are glands, and these actually do secrete a toxin. Not going to hurt me to touch, but if I were to lick the glands and get that toxin in my mouth, that would not be so pleasant. And if you've ever had a dog try to eat a toad, then you know what happens. That toxin gets into your mouth and it causes you to drool a whole lot. And so that's the toad's defense mechanism if it gets eaten. It makes the animal want to spit it out because it tastes really bad, makes you drool a lot, and so that's what the toad's got going for him. He's also making himself look really big right now. He's puffing himself up, saying, "Look at me, I'm so big. You can't eat me." So, it's my little toad friend. And so, while we're talking about toads, I want to show you something real quick that you can do. And toads, they make a little trill sound. He just made a sound when I put him back in there. But they make all kinds of little trilling sounds. And if you want to help out your toad friends, let me show you what we've got over here. You can make something called a toad abode for your yard, for your garden. You can get something like this, which you can get at a pet store, and put out in your garden. And it holds in moisture. And then you could also get like a pot, and you could bury half of it right here, and you can put this out. And these things hold in moisture, so that gives the amphibians what they want, and you could find little toads living in your yard. And here's another kind, so you can get at a pet store, like a piece of tree bark, or you can find something like this in the forest and have it yourself, made just like you like it from something you found in the forest. Put this in your garden. You can encourage toads to come live in your garden, which is nice because they do eat bugs. And so that's nice to have a little bug eater eating bugs in your garden. And it helps them out, gives them a place to live where they don't dry out, especially when it gets nice and hot and dry. And that's something that you can do. It's really cute. Alright, let's talk about a couple other animals. So, we actually have 3 kinds of salamanders to talk about today. The first kind of salamander that we are going to talk about today is actually a lungless salamander. And this guy is a 3-lined salamander. As you can see, he has 3 big lines, 2 on the side, 1 down the middle. And he's a big guy, and I'm not going to try to pick him up. He's very slippery. And these guys like to live, they never really leave the water. They like to be in streams and creeks and things like that. They can leave the water for small amounts of time, but they will never go far from the water. And they have lost their lungs, and instead they just use their skin to help exchange oxygen. And the reason for that is having lungs is sort of a disadvantage for them because they like to be at the bottom of the stream. And while water is moving back and forth, they like to be down at the bottom holding on to the rocks and things. And while they're doing that, if they had these big balloons full of air, they would keep floating to the top. And so that's not very helpful for them. So they don't have lungs. So that's a really cool guy. Let me see if I can get a front view of his face. There he is. So that's a cool salamander. We're going to cover him back up. Salamanders like nice, cool, dark places. They like to hide. They don't like to get too hot. They like to stay wet. Okay, so that's what we're doing here to make sure this guy stays happy. Alright, the next one we have actually has lungs. Still uses his skin to help him breathe, like all other amphibians, but this one does have lungs. And that's because this one is a terrestrial salamander, while the other one is semi-aquatic. Semi, meaning partly aquatic. He can still leave the water. Doesn't really like to, but he can. This one is terrestrial, meaning he likes to be on Earth. He likes to be out of the water. And so this habitat that we are at right now is actually this marbled salamander's home. So take Mr. Marbled Salamander, go back, look here, because this is where he came from. Okay, so this habitat is perfect marbled salamander habitat because they will come here, they will lay their eggs while it's still dry. So they will lay their eggs in the fall, and while it's still dry, and they will stay with their eggs, and they'll guard their eggs, and it's usually under logs. Like you see these logs that are everywhere. They'll lay them under the logs, they'll stay with their eggs and guard them, and then it starts to rain and get cooler and cooler and cooler, and they'll leave. And the eggs will stay there, and they'll hatch out, and they'll go through their metamorphosis. And then by the time it starts drying up, like this, when it's getting hotter, they're done with their metamorphosis. And they're crawling out of the pond, and they're going and finding their permanent habitats, which is under a log in the forest somewhere. Somewhere where it's still nice and cool and dark and wet under a log, but not actually in the water. So that's where they like to live. But they will come back to the same exact place, the same place they were born, every year to find mates and lay their eggs. That's really cool. They know where to go. They know where they were born. They'll come back to the same place. A lot of salamanders do this. Now, here's the thing. What if someone decided to fill in this little area, and sometimes it's not even this big of an area. Sometimes it's just a puddle that they really like. They come to every year, and it always fills up with water and stays full of water for months out of the year, and it always dries up. Sometimes that's the place the salamanders come to. Sometimes it's as big as this. What if someone decides to fill it in and build a building there? What happens to all the salamanders? Where do they go and lay eggs? They've only been going to the same place that they were born every single year. So then what happens? Where do they go? They don't know where to go. They've only been to one place. So that's another problem. Okay, so that's our marbled salamander friend, and this is where he came from. Alright. And then our last salamander friend was actually on yesterday's What Is It challenge when we were talking about Amphibian Week. And you got to see this one eat. This is a siren. So this is a fully fully in the water salamander. So, and you can see he's very much adapted for it. He has the gills. He never loses gills. He never really, it's almost like he doesn't complete his metamorphosis. So those fluffy things on the side of his head are the gills. You can see he has 2 front little feet. Little arms, little feet, little toes. But nothing on the back. So that's why he got the name Siren, like a mermaid. It's because he's got arms, but instead of legs, he just has a tail. So Siren is another word for mermaid, so that's why it's called that. And these guys are super cool. They have very slimy skin. They almost create like a super slime to escape predators. So if I were to try to grab him right now, he would create that super slime and slip right out of my hands. And so that makes him very hard to hang on to. They live in environments a lot like this, and if their environment dries up, they can actually burrow down in the mud, like what you see down there, burrow down in the mud and make almost like a cocoon out of their own skin with water and their slimy skin trapped in it. And they can stay like that for up to a year without eating or moving or anything else, waiting for the water to return to their habitat. That's just crazy. So they are very well adapted to surviving, and they will actually, they can go out of the water for small amounts of time, so hence their little legs. They will crawl out and move. They can move from different places, but they don't like to, and they can't dry out. So if their area, that's why they create that little cocoon if their area really dries out. So this is the Siren. This is what we took a video of. If you go onto our Facebook, you'll see a video of us feeding a mealworm to this guy yesterday. And in that video, he was smelling the mealworm, decided it was food, and munched onto it. And there's also, so this is the lesser siren, so a smaller siren. In Alabama, we also have the greater siren. We also have amphiumas, so kind of like this thing, but with tiny little legs in the front and tiny little legs in the back. And for that, we have 3 different species of amphiuma. We have the 1-toed, 2-toed, and 3-toed, varying sizes. And these things are a little bit more common than you would think. If you've been swimming in a lake or a pond or something, you might have been swimming with something like this. Deep down in that murky bottom where all the leaf litter is and the squelchy mud, there might have been something like this hiding down there, and you never even realized it. Of course, they don't have any interest in you at all. They're just going around doing their little amphibian things. But they're there. You just probably don't know about it. Really cool little animals. Alright, so if you would like to do something to raise awareness for Amphibian Week, we've got some cool little crafts that you can do. So this is a little lantern, and we got this off of the park website, which is Partners for Amphibian and Reptile Conservation, and they are doing some things for Amphibian Week. And this is one of the activities that they were showing you how to do. And these are little lanterns for your little night hikes and when you go out to look for amphibians and go on your little amphibian adventures. And these are just recycled jars that have been paper mache'd, where you just take some paper and some glue and paint on there. The website has all the instructions for how to do it, and you can draw your very own frog or toad or salamander on there, and you can put a little battery operated light, tea light in there, and then put some twine on it so that you can carry it or hang it, and you are ready to go. and show that you are supporting amphibians and Amphibian Awareness Week. So, we hope you learned some things. Whoa. Hope you learned some things about amphibians today. Go back and see the video of our siren eating. Check out that website, learn some other ideas, things, activities you can do for Amphibian Week, and we'll see you next time.